Hey everybody, Matt here. Before the podcast starts, just wanted to apologize for the quality of my microphone. We were having some technical difficulties, which we'll actually go into during the podcast, but they seemed to carry over to this week and sounded like I was in a hallway, when I really wasn't. This audio was way better than last week's, and so we ended up using this episode, but please bear with us. It will hopefully be fixed next week. Thanks for listening, and I hope you guys enjoy. Hello, Internets! I'm Matt.
And I'm Monster Punter.
And this is the Parallax Scrolling Podcast, where we give you our perspective on video games and the news that affects them. How are you this week?
This week has been very trying for me. I'm working upwards of 65, 70 plus hours a week right now, and it's going to be that way for the next month and a half, and it's not going to be very fun whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, this week has been very trying for me, too. Fun story, for those of you who are wondering, what happened last week? My microphone didn't pick me up. And we had a lot of technical difficulties. And the editor and I couldn't save things. And we had to watch the episode, and it sucks. Definitely not happy with what happened. I was very frustrated, and yeah, it ended up being a busy week beyond that. But that definitely didn't help matters. So fortunately, I did have some time to play some games. How about you? Did you have any time?
I played Soul Hackers 2 some more.
Mm-hmm.
The short answer to what that game is like is not as good as Persona. I will say that much right now. Not as good as Persona. But it has a lot of the same elements as Persona. Okay. And it's definitely got some of the same feel. It's still a good game. It's going to be probably like an 8 to 8.5 out of 10 experience, in my opinion.
Okay.
Worth playing through. I do look forward to finishing that.
All right.
But not as good as Persona.
Well, I did talk about it last week that you'll never hear. But I started playing Cathedral, finally. The first half of the game was a lot of fun. Good game, good graphics, good controls. Things flowed pretty well. The soundtrack was very repetitive. Like, I think literally each track is only a minute long, and then it repeats itself. When you're spending like 20 minutes in a level, some of them don't have a smooth transition, and so it's jarring at points. You're just like, okay. And that was fine and all. Then I started to get to a point in the game where it was the weapon and armor upgrade system did not pace with the enemies. There's a lot of time where I was going from enemies that were doing half a heart or a full heart to 2 to 4 hearts of damage, like almost immediately. And it made areas impossible. That like I had to work and go grind to buy armor at the store, to find I had to go find the things, not because it was, ooh, it's fun to explore. It was, I need this to win. And so I started playing that last week. I finished it this previous week, and there's no ending.
No ending?
You fight the final boss. So final boss has 3 phases, which are pretty, like, you have to learn the patterns. Understandable. But they're also kind of ridiculous. But I fought all 3 phases. The 3rd and final phase, you are falling from the sky. You fight the phase, you win. Credits. You don't even get a congratulations. You beat
I was
the
about
game.
to say, because, there's a ton of old school games where it's congratulations.
Oh, dude, Karnov for NES. Super hard game. It's actually kind of fun. You beat the final boss, and all you get is congratulations. The end.
The English in those old games
was terrible. But you didn't get that. You don't get that in Cathedral. You don't get an ending.
I love the English, man. I don't know what to say other than.
But the thing is, so you go through the credits, and there's a after credits scene. That's not an ending. That's an after credits scene. So there's no ending to the game. Kind of. I was able to get the game on Steam for half off, so I'm not like completely disappointed with the game. Am I wanting to go back? Not really. Because I've played other games that are older that are better Metroidvanias. Castle in the Darkness, fantastic. Bloodstain, Ritual of the Night's actually pretty good. Despite all the things that happened with it, it's still pretty good. Axiom Verge.
I think as far as like old school games coming out lately, I think it's important to note that I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but the TMNT Cowabunga bundle came out. And I plan to buy that.
Okay.
I'm fighting with the choice between getting it digitally or in physical.
Is there a physical copy?
There are physical copies of this.
Then you know where I'm going.
Well, I just, because all my beat 'em ups, we take it, we play with our friend, and we swap between them so much. Sometimes it might feel easier just to buy it digitally, and it might be one of the few times that I might consider that the better route to go.
Yeah. We don't have a whole lot of time today. We do want to talk about other things. But first off, just quick recap. We lost last week's episode, as in it's still available, but I'm not putting it up because we could not edit it into something cohesive. But the first thing I want to talk about is what we did talk about last week, very briefly. The big thing we talked about Gamescom. We talked about games we were kind of excited for. I had quite a big list.
Long story short, in my opinion, is lots of cool stuff, some not so cool stuff.
Right. And but I kind of want to touch on it because I finally got to see something this week about it. But one of the games I was interested in was Gun Grade Gore, and I got to see a trailer for it. I kind of like the way they're going with it. I kind of like the story, and it looks like you have multiple characters to play as this time around instead of just the one guy. So that's kind of cool. And the trailer kind of got me with one moment. There was a point where it says, "How do I love thee? Let me count the bullets." I was like, okay, this is good. But yeah, so we talked about Gamescom. We talked about the new Sony controller, yeah, and how modular it's supposed to be.
Yep. And just to recap very briefly, I think it's going to be positioned as a pro controller, and that was the intention from the get-go. But Microsoft's pro controller is over $150, so I expect Sony's to be in that neighborhood. Having said that, though, the idea that it's more modular than the Microsoft one, where you can actually take out the sticks and replace them if you need to. So you can kind of piecemeal some of this back together a little bit. And it does have the paddles buttons, so you can remap buttons to the bottom of the controller.
Yeah.
And this is really important for, like if I was to play Smite, I would probably want to play it on that controller because the less you have to take your thumb off the stick to do moves, to use your abilities and things like that, the better off you are, the more competitive you are.
It's a very esports friendly controller.
Yes, and that's what I think it's going to be positioned as.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be pretty good. And the idea that if you get a stick that drifts, you can just buy just the stick and replace it is going to be a nice addition.
I think that's the big thing for me. Yeah. And then we had one other thing we talked about that.
Yeah, so I brought it up last week, unfortunately. And there's some YouTubers talking about something similar to what I was bringing up this last week. And that is the state of gaming and how different it is than when it was we were growing up. The PS1, PS2, even earlier than that.
Yeah.
I bought 3 Mortal Kombat games for my godson.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm giving them to him later today.
Yep, so this isn't a spoiler. It already happened. Haha.
And those were PS2 games. And he wants to play those. And I think that's great. And the PS2 had its heyday from the end of 2000 through 2006-ish, basically. I mean, it went further than that, but that was the big time for it. And there's 3 Mortal Kombat games. And they're in those days, you had to ship complete games. If you wanted to update it, you had to come out with another game. And now with games, there's only one Street Fighter game that came out circa 2015, I want to say, and that's lasted the whole generation. There's no multiple versions of the game anymore. But they come out with additional characters. They revamp some things, rebalancing, other things like that. Things that you would get in another release of the game that are now just released as DLC in that. And I'm torn as to what's the better approach to a certain degree. I think that's good to a certain degree, but think about this too. The people who get the worst version of a game are your most hardcore fans. And with the games that are competitive, that's not such a big deal like the Street Fighters, like other competitive shooters and things like that. Things that you're going to stick with for a while and that can evolve over time, that's great. But for anybody who enjoys single player experiences, they get the worst version of a game. Hands down, without a doubt, the worst version of a game. If for people who had played Horizon Forbidden West day one, they have a worse experience than people who play for Horizon Forbidden West now. Because there's bugs that are fixed. There's graphical upgrades in this case, and among other things.
Yeah.
So we're in a state in gaming where you're better off waiting in a lot of cases, or you just deal with it. And if you're a hardcore fan, you get the worst version unless you're going to play it later, which not everybody gets to.
It's interesting because I think part of that also has to deal with developer crunch time, which I think is a much heavier topic and something that would probably be better for a longer episode than today's. But I do think that's part of it. Like, yeah, you're getting the worst version because the developer is being rushed by the publisher to get the game out.
That's always been the case, though.
Yeah, but I just feel like because video gaming is way more popular than it was when we were kids, that it's much more prevalent. It's happening much more often.
We live in an age where information is so much easier, too.
Yeah.
It's probably been happening this whole time, but you didn't hear about it because the methods of communication available to you simply didn't get that information to you very quickly.
Yeah. Well, so that's pretty much last week in a nutshell. We do have a shorter episode today because, well, we got somewhere we have to be and we're kind of time crunched. Speaking of crunch, and not the Nestle's kind, which is delicious.
It has to do with the 3 Mortal Kombat games I just mentioned.
Yeah, again, spoilers.
Only for one person.
Yeah, maybe. Nobody else probably listens anyways.
We got some listeners.
No, I'm talking about the people at the thing.
Yeah.
They probably don't listen. Anyhow, I had a couple things I wanted to talk about real quick. First one being the Xbox Friends and Family Game Pass got announced this past week, or got leaked, and then they announced it. And pretty much, just my only spin on the whole thing is, if you're going to cover a story, cover it properly, use proper wordage, because the person I got the news information from did not explain how this thing works well, and it kind of freaked me out. Luckily, I have Monster here who can explain things better, so please explain for our audience what's going on.
It's the Xbox Friends and Family plan. It'll be $24, $24.99 a month for up to 5 people on your service. And they'll get access to all the Microsoft services. So
for Ultimate.
Yes,
yeah,
for Ultimate. And so it's a great way to get more people involved. And for people who have people that can bundle together, it'll be a great way to save money amongst you. I think it's going to be really good from a financial perspective, like I said, but it might be more challenging for Microsoft in the long run because I think overall they'll increase their revenues, but there's going to be more people on the service. So companies who come in might demand more money because they're going to say, well, you have this many more users. It's going to cost this much more for us to put or to sell the rights to put it on your service for a little while. So those are challenges I think they're going to have to face and deal with.
Possibly. I think, honestly, what you might see happening is games that are already on the Game Pass aren't going to be on there as long.
That's possible.
Some games are still on there from start, but I think if it's a non-Microsoft game, like if it's an indie publisher, it's going to only be on there for like a month or two.
Well,
versus some of them have been on there for like ever.
I think they've been on a year or 2 years in some cases. I think Streets of Rage 4 was on there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So
because like Hades just left.
Just left.
But yeah, like it's just imagine if this happens. The past had happened sooner. Hades could have left sooner if that's the way they want to do it.
And so there's a lot to be figured out. But what Matt was confused about was if you have a certain amount of time you've already paid for and you opt into this new service, he thought that all that time was going to be kind of lost. If I'm saying it right.
Not really.
But converted into like this very short period, and that was it.
Yeah, what it sounded like was the way the journalist was describing it was, if you buy 30 days now for yourself, if you were to convert that into the Friends and Family Game Pass, you only get 18. The Xbox Live, you only get 12. It wasn't like a conversion. It was more like, well, if you get it for yourself, cool, but you bought the Friends and Family Pass, so now it's actually, you're going to have to buy 2 of them to get close to equating that time.
Yeah.
Like hot dogs and hot dog buns in that respect.
So the way it really works is this, and I'll explain it because it's a very easily divisible. I bought a year of Xbox Live when I bought my Series X. Mm-hmm. It was $60 for that year because it was $5 a month for Xbox Live Gold. But I decided to go with Game Pass, which is $15 a month. So that's $60 that I had. That whole year of Xbox Live Gold was converted to 4 months of Game Pass because 60 is divisible by 15 4 times. So that's what they're doing. If you've paid a certain amount of time already, they convert that money into the equivalent time for the Friends and Family plan.
And that sounds a lot better than what the journalist said. So like I said at the start of this, journalists, word yourselves carefully. So it sounds interesting. I'm intrigued to see more what's going to happen with that. It might be something to do to actually get on. So we'll see. Real quick before I get to my big crux of the week, couple games got announced that I was interested for. I already mentioned the Gungrave Gore trailer. I saw it was really exciting. There is another game that just got announced today as of this recording. Sorry to date the episode, but there is a card game system, a tabletop card game system called Boss Monster. It looks like old retro video games, and it's you versus your friends in building the best dungeon to collect the most heroes to get the most,
Yeah, he plays the bad guys.
You play as the bad guys. Well, that company just came out with an announcement for a game called Overboss, which is literally this game in video game format. It sounds cool.
The game is fun. The tabletop version of the game is very fun.
Yeah, and just from what we can see of this one, it's not just that you're building the dungeon, you're actually building the overworld of the dungeon now, too. So, I'm kind of interested to see this. I want more information. But it got announced today, so I want to, bring that up. Any other things you got before I go on a rant?
Go for it.
Rant and a tear. Here we go. this week it got announced that Quantic Dream got acquired by NetEase, I believe it's a Korean company.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. But it was also announced that Sony and Tencent have together have 30% of From Software acquired. Also this week, the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition is in contest throughout the world. The only people who have currently okayed it is Saudi Arabia. In the UK, has actually put out they have a 5-day warning. They have 5 days to give out a proposal from both sides of the company, or both companies, sorry, to explain why this is an okay thing and not a bad thing. So here's my issue. Acquisitions. We talked about the Microsoft Activision Blizzard thing before. But all these companies, Sony got Bungie, and it just keeps going. All these companies are getting eaten up. And I honestly believe at this point it is bad for the gaming industry. And it's bad for the consumer base. Because it's going to get to a point now where you are going... They say they're all going to play nice. I don't know for how long. I think eventually it's going to get to a point where they are going to... You're only going to find Call of Duty, World of Warcraft. You're only going to find those things on PC and Xbox. You're only going to find Destiny and Elden Ring and Dark Souls. You're only going to find those on Sony. It's going to get to that point.
But exclusives, as a counterpoint, the exclusives have always been a thing. People buy Nintendo games or systems because that's where the Nintendo games are.
Right, but for me, the problem is it's ramping up. It's becoming more of an issue because more IPs are being acquired. So it's less games on more systems. I feel like it's not going to go well.
I think at some point, antitrust will come into play. Maybe this is the tipping point. Maybe it's not. But, they need to get the okay from practically every country that they want to sell in
absolutely
to do this. And, with them being worldwide, that's a lot of governments to sway. It's going to be not only the $70 billion to acquire Activision aside, they have to pay more than that just in lawyer costs and legal fees and everything to get this to even go. It's not going to be an immediate thing either. I understand that. But it's alarming. Yes.
All of it's alarming. I feel like it's all happening too quickly.
Yeah.
Like I feel too many companies are being consumed and not enough companies are starting up to counterbalance.
But the indie scene is thriving more than I've seen it thrive ever, really.
True.
I mean, if you want older school experiences, like games more of yore and things like that, not AAA experiences as far as like budget is concerned.
Yeah.
The indie scene is where you go nowadays.
That reminds me, Shovel Knight Dig is coming out soon. Possibly this month.
Well, he has a shovel. I'd hope he do some digging with it.
Well, that was the intent. They're like, well, it's about time he does some actual digging besides just in the levels. But yeah, but no. So that's just kind of my major issue. My major hang-up is I think it's happening too quickly. If this was a slower burn, I don't think I'd have as much of a problem with it.
Yeah, and speaking of purchasing, one of the things we did talk about last week, now that I think about it, Sony raising the prices around the world of their system.
Oh, yeah.
Just to hit on this really, really quickly. The thing, Jim Ryan under Sony, or the Sony under Jim Ryan, I'm sorry, it feels a lot like Don Matrick when he was working for Microsoft. The guy who almost killed the Xbox brand. Because the Xbox One was a disaster when it came out. Simply put, a complete disaster.
Yeah.
With them raising the prices, now here in the United States, we don't feel that because the system's prices are not changing. But everywhere else in the world, it's getting more expensive. In Japan, for instance, the Switch is already number one anyway. That's only going to push them to be bigger in that region. Europe, that could change. Sony was still big in Europe, but who knows? We'll see what happens, how this all shakes out.
And we were also talking not just about the system, but the digital copies of games. The prices were getting ridiculous as well. And that, again, the UK has been like going after the video game industry. I think as they rightfully should, because the best example I could use was God of War. God of War on the US PlayStation Store is $69.99. On the UK store, it's £69.99. That equates to roughly $82.18 American. That's like a $12 markup that should not be. It should be this, the equivalent price worldwide.
But that's what they've been doing for decades over there.
Well, right, but the UK's finally. I think the UK's finally had enough, and they're just like, stop it.
Well, we'll see what happens with that. But all these anti-consumer things that Sony is doing is very reminiscent of what Don Matrick did at Microsoft. He's the guy. I'm almost positive I have him pegged as the right guy who said this, that if you want to play older games, we have a 360, an Xbox 360 for that. And that's just reeks of arrogance.
It reeks of arrogance, and it reeks of somebody who has zero clue about video games.
And I have a feeling that Jim Ryan doesn't play video games very much. He's very much a businessman who doesn't see any. He's very short-sighted, which is counterintuitive for a Japanese company. The Japanese business industry is known to be very long. When they talk about the long term, they're talking 100. Yeah, they are talking hundreds of years from now. They're not where United States business, when they talk about long term, they're talking a year from now.
So you're telling me that Nintendo, back when they were selling those playing cards, they were talking about a Italian plumber rescuing a mushroom princess?
Yes.
Wow, that's impressive.
And going down pipes,
which didn't exist at the time.
But the point is
joke aside, we get it. I get it.
They try to plan out as much as they can within what now. Obviously, things will change by the time you get out there, of course. But I think it's going to be bad. I think Jim Ryan is to Sony what Don Matrick is or was to Microsoft. And when Phil Spencer came into Microsoft and started revamping the Xbox brand and getting things going, it's way different now at Microsoft.
I tell you, I think when Phil Spencer actually came into Microsoft and the Xbox specifically, I think people were a little leery, probably because they were still dealing with Donnie, but now he's like the savior of video games almost. And Sony needs somebody like him.
He's the one who pushed crossplay and finally got it rolling to a large degree. He's responsible for a lot of the good things that are going on in the industry too. I shouldn't say responsible, but he is a factor in getting all those things going.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I can't underestimate or understate how much Don Matrick almost killed the Xbox brand. When Satya Nadella, the CEO, the current CEO of Microsoft, took over for Ballmer, Steve Ballmer, the Microsoft or the Xbox division was losing money like crazy. And he is gone on record, or it is recorded as him saying, why are we still funding this? This is not, we should get rid of this. Well, thank God they didn't. We needed the competition. Imagine the video game industry has no Microsoft right now. Some people would prefer it that way, but competition is good. We want more people in the game. And when the bar to get in is at least in current gen tech, which, like it or not, PS5 and Xbox Series consoles are current gen now. It's been almost 2 years. They are not next gen anymore.
People keep saying it though. People keep saying it.
Well,
like,
maybe
no.
because they can't go buy one still.
Yeah. We go back to the meme of Cord from Endgame.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He's still playing at PS4 in 2025 because they still can't get a PS5.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I'm just happy that it turned out the way it is. It costs too much to compete on the bleeding edge nowadays. The only companies I could see coming in and doing something like that would be a Facebook, a Apple, or a
And Meta's tanking.
Amazon or something like that. And do we really want those companies in there? I guess for more competition, but when you have to be almost $1 trillion companies to have skin in the game anymore, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good.
It feels like, how to say it? It feels like indie developers are going to move away from the AAA. It's like they're going to make a new type of genre, or maybe a medium, a new type of video game medium, completely separate from what the AAA guys do. And that's what's going to happen. There's going to be this huge schism in the industry. I think that's going to suck.
And not only does it take a lot to develop a system, to develop the underlying technology is almost impossible to do now. I don't know how much you've or any of our audience has paid attention to the graphics card market. In 2018, Intel announced that they are working on a new graphics card technology that was originally supposed to come out in 2020.
Okay.
It's 2022. They've released one card, actually. It competes in the very low end, and its performance is, to put it nicely, all over the place. It competes. It punches above its weight in some things and way below its weight in others. And this is from Intel. This is the same company who's been making microchips forever. This stuff is hard. Video game systems used to design their own graphics cards or chips that went into these systems. The Emotion engine for PS2, for instance, Sony developed that.
Yeah.
But now it's cost prohibitive. That's why Microsoft and Sony both go to AMD for their technology, and Nintendo goes to Nvidia. It's so.
Well, I'll be honest, I haven't been paying attention to any of that because I'm too poor to pay attention. That's just...
Okay. Well, I mean...
I had to get that in there. But yeah, definitely some stuff that's been happening this week. But like I said, we are kind of crunched for time today. So we are going to wrap it up here. So, with that said, we do thank you guys for listening. We do thank you guys for coming back and listening repeatedly. We thank you for all the support. So if you guys want to see any more of what we're doing, you can follow me over at youtube.com/MattFinish for now. Still haven't had time to change the name, but I'm there. I'm playing games. I'm going to hopefully get some more videos out soon. And you can follow Monster Punter over at Monster_Punter over on Twitter. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. We're getting out of here. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care.
Later.